Guys, I don't even I don't even know where to begin. Like, I thought we were gonna be talking about the Nebelhorn Trophy, but then Russian test skates occurred. I don't even know how to process all of this. Like, there's so much to say, and the amount of money that they dumped on that competition, it was like they said, let's make this like the Oscars. Let's show the international figure skating community that we don't need them, that we are better off without them, and that we're hotter than them. Like it felt like a drunk girl calling their ex-boyfriend at 3 a.m. energy. And they were trying to post like their revenge pic on Instagram, but they can't even do that because they're also banned from Instagram in this circumstance. But you know what I mean. And they had the slow motion like approaching the camera for every skater. And I can't help it. Every time that happened, it reminded me of the
This week, a hot new bombshell enters the villa.
Don't call me up, I'm going out tonight, feeling good.
I'm Mabel, I'm 25, I'm a singer from London.
And it had me dying laughing every single time. Like, it was the best. I can't explain it. Although skating next to their giant face was literally the worst. So why don't we just start talking about what we saw here? As we have talked about many times before, they are still banned internationally from competition, but they're holding a lot of their own national competitions. And so I believe that because of that, we don't know how many skaters would truly continue their career or how many are just continuing because it is still a very thriving business sport. It still pays well in Russia. And now with the growing nationalism, athletes are being held at a higher standard. Maybe even the state is giving them money because they need to show strong face. If you have seen the news, Russia has just enacted its first draft since World War II. And so nationalism and just having soft power is very, very important for Russia right now. Basically, if our Russian athletes are amazing and you can see them on our state-run television, then you can be amazing and freaking fight for the government too. That's basically the energy that we have right now, and the athletes, whether they like it or not, are state propaganda. So let's take a turn back into the sports element and let's just talk about what kind of programs we saw. First, we have the men, starting with the men off because for Russia, they are definitely the most irrelevant and the discipline in which they have the least amount of dominance internationally. First, we have Mark Kondratjuk, whose name I still can't pronounce, and his biggest rise to fame since the Olympics was his Jesus Christ Superstar program, which I think caused a lot of fanfare internationally. And then also his very public relationship with Alexandra Trusova. His programs, I think, followed his style, which is very theatrical with a touch of like eccentric and weird. He really loves giving himself into his performances, and I will say that is one thing I miss about Russian skaters. They do not shy away from being campy and weird. And figure skating is a sport that gives you the space to be extra, to have dramatic flair, to be theatrical, and I feel like a lot of the US skaters and Canadian skaters shy away from that, and they try to be like balletic and solemn and dreary, but I feel like Russia alongside Japan really lean into what makes the sport so great to me, which is the campiness, theatric side of it. And so I do miss that. His programs follow that formula, and I will say for his show program, he decided to follow in the steps of Nathan Chen and model his costume after a 90s arcade carpet. And while I do love the whimsy of his choreography, most of his jumps were very scary to see. And although he did not fall, none were landed smoothly. For his long program, he again wore a costume that is classic but a bit off kilter in the colors. And then once again, his jumps were very scary to see. However, this time, he topped himself by actually falling in most of them. Also, props to the camera director for constantly cutting back to Trusova for her reaction, because that is what the people want. And her reaction to him was mild at best and worried at worst. Then we have Mikhail Kuryla, who, if you don't remember, had to drop out of the Olympics due to a positive COVID test, but he also had a very shaky season due to inconsistency. And let's just say that Mikhail Kuryla is not another hot new bombshell walking into the villa, because he is doing the exact same program. Like, he is doing the freaking Nutcracker costume program. Now he's just in white. And why? Why? Who thought this was a good idea? Like, nobody liked it last season that much, and no one wants to see it again. Even though this Nutcracker costume is way less ugly in white than it was in red, I don't know who needs to tell Mikhail Kuryla to this, but you cannot be the hot new bombshell in the villa with the same cursed Olympic program. Like, he is just this kind of skater where I guess we're still trying to work on his mental strength, his mental game, because because when his jumps are landed, it is the most beautiful thing you will ever see. His choreography is very balletic, it is very traditional, it's very beautiful, it basically perfectly stereotypical Russian figure skater, but he just doesn't have consistency. When he lands things, he's a gorgeous skater, but the consistency with him is almost non-existent at this point. And for his long, he had the complete opposite, a new and very theatrical mime program. And while I do admire the Russians for being theatrical, I think this one might be a bit too cheesy for the stoic Kolyoda. Like, he is better at playing the prince or the soldier than a freaking mime. And while the choreo might not have been for him, his jumps in the long were significantly better, although he did pop one jump. Then finally, the only person I'm going to mention for the men is Evgeny Semenenko. He is our resident K-pop boy, and he did what a resident K-pop boy does. He picked an angsty K-pop song for his long program. And then in his short program, he was even more emo, if you can believe it. He had this kind of classical gothic piece of music. He had black hands and like black veins going down his arm. And again, I love him embracing the drama and the theatric of figure skating. I mean, I probably wouldn't even be talking about him if it wasn't for this. Now let's talk about pairs. Pairs is by far probably the discipline which is the most affected by Russian absence internationally. Like, without the Russians, there is truly no cutthroat competition elsewhere in the globe. And in most places, there isn't even competition against teams because there aren't enough teams. So first, let's mention Mishina and Galyamov. They are the bronze medalists from the 2022 Olympics, and honestly, my only interest in them before was their ongoing rivalry with their teammates, Boykova and Kovsulovsky, and they have since retired since not making it at the podium at the Olympics. So now without this rivalry, they're way less interesting to me. And now without Sway and Han, the Russians are truly the only pairs teams who have cutthroat competition against each other. And because they are banned from international competition, these really highly skilled teams are constricted to only Russia. And most of the competitions is basically going to be just Mishina and Galyamov versus Tarasova and Morozov, who are the silver medalists of the 2022 Olympics. However, Mishina and Galyamov, for their short program, they're doing my favorite waltz, which they performed almost perfectly, but then had a wobble in the side-by-side jumps. And then their long is an Elvis-inspired program, which again was almost perfect, but then they had a fall, showing just how much this Olympic fall maybe affected them and their psyche, because they are a couple who was known for consistency and strength and power. Like, they were the couple who broke all possible world records in pairs in one single competition. Like, they broke them in the short, long, and overall score, which probably makes it even sting a little bit more when they lost to Tarasova and Morozov. So of course, let's talk about Tarasova and Morozov. They are the team who joined Team Tutberidze and became the unlikely rose to the occasion team. And they are, to my understanding, still under Team Tutberidze and kind of like the weird 5-team coach situation that they have going with Maxim Trankov as well. And to me, I'm kind of shocked that they're still going along with figure skating. I feel like if they were still going to international competitions, they might have already retired, because I feel like they have already won the highest medal they're ever going to get. Like, after joining the politically savvy Team Tutberidze, it was that they started to rise in the ranks and unexpectedly got freaking silver. Might have even had a chance at gold if the Olympics hadn't taken place in China. And of course, Sui and Han were going to get that gold, and they deserved it. However, I don't know. I feel like this is a team who would have retired already, but is just performing because either A, they love the sport, or B, the money is still good, or C, they don't have a backup plan. Their new programs, the first one is a very cryptic, like light versus darkness Ave Maria for their new short program. And then for the long, they decided to reuse the music and the costumes from last season, which again is not a hot new bombshell entering the villa energy, which is what this event was supposed to be striving for. But to their credit, they performed both programs surprisingly well. Now for ice dance, I don't think I'm gonna cover Russian ice dance this season because I don't believe it to be relevant enough in my life, nor relevant enough in the international figure skating world. I don't even know the names nor the characters from the Russian teams, so I shouldn't even be doing this anyway. The only thing I will give is a shout out to a team I got emotionally attached about a year ago. Their names are Vasilia and Valeri, and last season they had probably one of the most beautiful Romeo and Juliet programs I have ever seen, and they were outranked by the Nepo babies that are Diana Davis and Gleb Smolkin, who are now very likely trying to skate for the USA as they continue to train in the US and have been very notably absent from Russia and this event. For those who don't know, Diana Davis is the daughter of a Tutberidze who is an ice dancer and left Russia alongside her partner to train in the States a while back, making it so that her and Tutberidze actually did a little small US tour of the rinks looking for a coach. She has since married her partner Gleb Smolkin, who is also another Nepo baby. He is the son of a famous Russian actor, and since Diana Davis is a US citizen, many people suspect they got married so that he could gain citizenship and that they could switch for the USA, since now Russia is banned from international competition. Again, this is all alleged, nothing official yet, but it's looking highly, highly likely. Now back to my babies, Valeria and Vasilia, or Vasilisa maybe. They had a very cringy dance to reggaeton, but then very surprisingly it switched to bachata, which by the way is the music of my people, the Dominicans, and I do believe it is the very first time I have ever seen bachata used in an ice dance. So shout out to them. Their long was interesting, I guess, but they continue to have still some of the most intricate lifts I've ever seen and are the only ice dance team who has made my heart jump since Tessa and Scott. So shout out to them. Finally, we have the ladies, the reason you are all here. Let's start with the forever fan favorite, the one, the only, the Empress Elizaveta Tuktemisheva. And much like Tarasov and Morozov, I'm low-key, high-key surprised that she's still going strong. Like, I honestly feel she would also retire had they been invited to international competitions. But now that they're kind of constricted to national competitions only, she is still freaking going. She is here and she is more beautiful than ever. My true bombshell entering the villa. Her show program is a classic Empress program where she first seduces you, then she later makes you want to jump and fucking rave in the mosh pit along with her on the ice. Her jumps are looking good and they're hitting the key moments in the music, and honestly at this point that is all I want from the Empress. For her hands to be seductively gesturing and then for her jumps to be landing in time with the song. And to me, that is a Tuktemisheva success. In the long, she traded the seduction for romantic gesturing, and she did have a fall, but the hands were gesturing and the jumps were in time with the music, which means another Tuktemisheva success in my book. Anna Sherbakova, our reigning Olympic gold medalist, was not present. This, I am guessing, is because of her very recent knee surgery. For those who don't know, Anna Sherbakova got a knee surgery, and Aliona Kostornaya, who was part of the formidable 3A, then left Tutberidze, etc., got a hip surgery. They even cheered each other on in Instagram comments after their respective surgeries, which is very cute, kind of sad, but very cute. To my understanding, Anna is still under Team Tutberidze, but was only absent because of her surgery, and we all know that Aliona Kostornaya is very much not part of Team Tutberidze anymore. Aliona was also not present at these test skates, although I feel like most people have already assumed that she's kind of quietly retired, kind of quietly quitting figure skating, much like we all assumed it with Evgenia Medvedeva after she missed most of the 2020 season. So yeah, both girls were absent. Most people suspect that Anna will be present throughout the rest of the season once she recovers. Aliona, most people suspect she will not. Now we have probably the most anticipated skater after Kamila Valieva, Alexandra Trusova. And for what I can find, she only performed a short program. Please let me know if I'm wrong, but I don't believe she performed a free/long program the next day, and I am not sure why. It's been rumored/reported that it's because she doesn't want to risk injury, or maybe it is because she is too injured already. Regardless, she only did the short program, and this is because in the free program, she would be doing quads, and ladies can't perform quads in the short, so I'm guessing she doesn't want to do quads right now, which is worrying at best. Regardless, her short was surprising in more ways than one. Her short program was this jazzy version of I'll Put a Spell on You, and dare I say, she's taking a page from the Tuktemisheva book because the vibe was very much the same. But I will say that her performance skills are way better. Like, this is the most amount of passion I've seen her had on the ice. Like, this is the amount of passion I was looking for in her Frida Kahlo program last season. The jumps, albeit, were a bit shaky. However, I will say the only reason I feel like they're shaky is because we're so used to Trusova having powerful jumps. I mean, she is the Russian rocket, the quad goddess, and so to see her perform average is concerning. And the fact that she didn't perform the next day is also concerning, but also very impressive that her show program had such an impact. I will say though, I did not like the dress, not only because it is ugly, but because the green makes me remember her best dress ever, what I call a Tinkerbell dress, which she had under Plushenko, and this one pales in comparison. Like I said, I'm a bit worried for Trusova, not just because this is the first time we're seeing her compete anything since the Olympics, and she had a very dramatic exiting of the Olympics, but also because she already is only performing one day, which makes me think she is injured. And although I'm happy she's taking this injury seriously and is resting to not strain herself more, I am worried for her for the rest of the season. I just hope that this season goes well for her and her body. And now, of course, we need to talk about the frickin' hoodie program. This is the most discussed topic to come out of this whole event by far. And if you don't know why, what happened, or what is the significance of this freaking hoodie, get ready, because it's a crazy freaking ride. So, for those who don't know, Kamila Valieva is the skater who was caught for doping in the 2022 Olympics. She is the 15-year-old skater from Russia that you heard about. And if you don't know, she is still under investigation for this event, since the Russian Federation has appealed the positive test and is claiming that it was done through an erroneous drinking of her grandfather's heart medication. During the trial at the 2022 Olympics, the IOC and the Court of Arbitration for Sport decided to let Kamila still practice while she was being investigated and while the decision if she was allowed to compete in the Olympics was still being decided. Spoiler alert, she ended up being allowed to participate in the event, which inadvertently caused this and this. And yes, Team USA and Team Japan still don't have their Olympic medals because the investigation is still underway. Anyways, during these practices at the Olympics, the media was very intensely trying to get a quote from Kamila. And for the first few days, while the circumstances seemed grim against her, her team, Team Tutberidze, which is made up of full-grown adults, let Kamila walk alone through the press line, which caused the infamous hoodie moment. The infamous hoodie picture, where this 15-year-old girl, which was possibly coaxed to dope by these same adults, was left to walk alone through the press line, only with her hoodie to defend herself from the ardent media circus around her. So imagine everyone's shock and bafflement when this same team creates and curates a program which distorts the reality of that moment, framing it as an event which just happened to happen to Kamila instead of it being a consequence of actions by these same adults, allegedly. Like, let me repeat this. Her team, who might very well be connected to how Kamila ended up having a positive test for doping, who at the very least could have accompanied her during that press line, after putting a child in this very situation, is now making a program about how she overcame a dark moment that was given to her by the big bad media. The program begins with voiceovers of the doping scandal, in English of course, because again, this was done by the big bad Western media, and it ends with her recreating the infamous hoodie picture, making her not only live through this surely traumatic event once again, but completely separating themselves from any direct correlation of these events, when in reality they might be the direct causation of these events. Maybe, possibly, allegedly. Like the whole reason she covered her face with a hoodie when she was trying to avoid the media was because there was no adult from her team at the time to walk beside her and cover/block her face from the media. And the only reason why the media was even aggressively interested in a quote from Kamila was because she was caught doping and was in the process of trying to appeal this decision. And you know, who would know something about that? Who would know about how is it possible she got positive tests for doping? Well, there are two people you can try to interview. One, the child in the eye of the storm, or two, the adults who trained her. And where were they? Well, I can assure you they were not by her side. How do I know that? Because there's a picture to prove it. Like, at least for those first couple of walks, Kamila Valieva was left to walk alone. Her team was not by her side. They were training the other girls, or they were walking around, I do not know, but they were not there. And in this moment of extreme stress and anxiety for this child, who might possibly have her dreams crumbling in front of her, which still did end up happening later on, they just left her to walk alone. Like, the amount amount of bending over backwards to make this Camila's entire personality while simultaneously trying to distance themselves from the reality of the situation is insane. Not to mention that people, Camila is still under investigation for doping. It's not like she was cleared. It's not like she is innocent and we must now rejoice in this program that is calling for justice of her name. No, she is still under investigation. And like so far, there has been no news or updates from the investigation. But let's just say that for Camila and her team Tutberidze, no news is good news. And they still decided to make a program about this because they have to make it her whole personality trait because they have no other option. Instead, they have to confront the truth. And like, you know, I said I love the Russian theatrics and miss them sometimes in international competitions. Well, I don't even think there's theatrics anymore. This is something else. And the thing I don't think the Russian public nor Camila will ever do is I don't think they'll ever see the situation in a different light. Like for Camila, this is the reality. For Camila, she was not caught doping. For Camila, she was put in a situation where they were trying to undermine Russia and somehow somebody tampered with her drink and they blew this out of proportion just so that she would lose. Like, there is no incentive for Camila to try and question the narrative built in this program because for her it is better to believe that she is truly dope-free and it is just the Western media in a quest to try and beat her and Russia and setting her up to fail. Like believing and living this narrative has not only made her a household name in Russia, but has made her a national hero and a symbol of Russian pride. At a time where nationalism in Russia is very important for the government because they're in the midst of international warfare. Like Russia has just announced its first draft since World War II, which makes its soft power in things like sport even the more relevant and needed in the cultural zeitgeist of Russia. Since this state-run media is literally the person who records this competition. Like Channel 1 is state-run. The people who fund their sports program is the state. And they want to put emphasis on these athletes. They want to showcase them to the Russian people, show them how strong and formidable Russian athletes are, and by extension, Russia is. Not to mention the economic benefits that this brings Camila and Team Tutberidze. Like they're set up for life in terms of public appearance fees, ice shows, gala, master classes, and remember, Tutberidze supposedly, allegedly, gets 40% of every single one of her skaters' earning, making this distorted delusion of a program narrative even the more beneficial to propagate and believe. Like, no wonder they want to make this Camila's like one personality trait, the one thing that she's known for. Like, she's treated like she is the gold medalist. Like, I don't know how many times I can say this. The amount of just fame and attention and put it on a pedestal that she is given by the Russian government. And like, that's the thing about Russian skating. It draws you in with this magical, beautiful movement and athletes and storytelling on the ice, and then you peek a little bit behind the curtain and it makes you question your entire existence. Like, this event was so fun to watch. I can't even front. Like, it was so fun to watch. The production value, the campy performances, the sheer talent showcased on the ice. But then you remember things like this. You remember that Camila was caught for doping and is still under investigation for it. And it's not like you remember. They're telling you what she went through. I mean, their perspective of what she went through. And then you start to wonder what else could be making all these performances so quote unquote magical. Then you wonder even more. Like, is the production value through the roof because they have an overflow of cash in the bank due to not flying internationally? Or is the government giving them even more funding to propagate the sport in a show of strength for the nation? And then you remember a nation whose government just issued a draft to fight in Ukraine. And even if it is an overflowing of money due to the ban, then you remember that they're even banned in the first place. Like, they're not even banned because they had 2 Olympic doping scandals, but because they invaded a whole nother country. Russian figure skating is so beautiful, but you can't watch without letting your mind wander about the seedy underbelly, which feeds it and makes it grow strong, especially now. And even when you don't think about the most obvious current things like the war, then you remember how the Russian culture is one that downplays the usual trappings of figure skating, the quote-unquote basic trappings, like eating disorders, and it makes you feel even more troubled. Like, just last week, ice dancer Anastasia Soskova, also known as Zhenya's bestie, confessed that she used to take up to 40 laxatives at a time, which led to the damage of her organs, and she only stopped taking the pills after she had to get surgery, and the doctor told her mother that she could have a fatal outcome because her organs were beginning to fail. And like, this always happens. Every time one of these Russian skaters retires officially after years of not competing, they come out with all these horror stories. Same thing happened with Yulia Lidnitskaya, who admitted that she was anorexic and had to be put in the hospital for it. And this only came out after she retired. Like, Anastasia confessed that she learned this through the culture of the girls. She said that after the Junior World Championships, they tried a new cuisine, and she saw that the girls had brought a lot of pills with them, and they were laxatives. And after eating, they would take these pills so that the weight did not change. And this happens every single time. The confessions of trauma that they go through, that they put their bodies through, and that the trauma that they've gone through with their own coaches. And afterwards in the Russian press, these same coaches don't say that culture in figure skating needs to change. Instead, they say that it was necessary for medals. So it puts you in a situation where, like, you love this sport and you love these Russian athletes who honestly bring life to a globally dying sport. Like, it's decreasing internationally. The interest is at an all-time low, I would say. But then you can never let yourself think too much about what it could be that makes them such great skaters. And it's such a hard place where just fans of the sport and these athletes are put into just because of the way that everything works and just the dark side of figure skating, and particularly in Russia. And I don't know, like, I loved watching this event. I'm still gonna follow all these skaters, but I also agree that they should not be part of international competition because it's just too much. It's too much. And the fact that they decided to make the program about her freaking doping scandal, like, do you want us to think about it or not? Like, it's all about just making her seem like a martyr. I don't know. I have a feeling that something's gonna come out from this investigation that is gonna make them regret their choice. But then again, will it even matter because they're not even performing it internationally? So will it even make headlines over here? Who knows? I just hope that Team USA and Team Japan can get their medals. And yeah, Russian freaking test skates was crazy. Like, I don't know what else to say besides the fact that it was freaking crazy. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. You always do. And as always, shout out to Karina, Katie, Leslie, Natalia, and my only boy left, Timothy. Hopefully, I will talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.